Hello. Welcome to the 11th video of the series. When lately I received emails telling me that my book, The Four Unknown Facts, had made things so clearer to understand the Course in Miracles, I was very thrilled. And so it brought me back to the time when I used to know the Course in Miracles. I studied it. I put the books on the shelf for the last 10 years, and now I brought them back and going over them again. I have found out something very interesting, something that has moved me to tears, that has touched me deeply. And thank you for those of you who have asked me this question and telling me that my book simplified the Course in Miracles. And when I say my book, I didn't write it really. It was written through me. I don't think I could have resisted it. It compelled me to write it. As a matter of fact, the truth is, I'm not even a very good writer. Most of the time I write through tremendous inspiration, and when I write through inspiration, that means I'm inspired, and so it is this inspiration that does the writing. But anyway, what I have found out by going over through the Course the last few days is that the Course also based on four unknown facts of reality. But let me elucidate, please. Okay, first, when I received the first unknown fact, which represents the four facts, because there's only one unknown fact, it had no words, and it was very clear that there was no way to describe it, to define it. And so I was told that it is love, but mankind has no idea, as a rule, generally, has no idea what love is, because love is beyond limit. Love has no definition. Love is not a thing. The Course in Miracles says that there's either love or fear in emotions, but it also says that which is all-encompassing has no opposite. And that's what we're talking about. That which has no opposite. So therefore, I felt compelled to use the word emptiness, because emptiness has no limit. Emptiness has no definition. Emptiness has no beginning or end. It has no boundary line. So emptiness, nothingness, is the very definition of what love is. See, the moment we think of love, which is the basis of A Course in Miracles and also the Four Unknown Facts, we think of love, we have an idea what love is, and we always think of it as an emotion. And so we're based on that, we can never go beyond it to find out what truly is. And so the word emptiness is the most perfect word, because it is empty of judgment, empty of ego, empty of past and future, empty of any idea you have of yourself. It is truly being. And you are a human being playing the human role. And that is the most perfect way of putting it. So when we think of love, we think in terms of a feeling for someone or something. You know, the best way that I can describe the knowing of love, true love that is, the emptiness of love, is a mother delivering a child. She goes through excruciating pain in the delivery. She suffers so much. The feminine principle is the most beautiful of all. And when the child is delivered and the mother holds the child in her arms, at that moment she's in love. She's not conscious of her pain any longer. She's not conscious of her body. She's not engrossed in her own egoic feelings. She's just one with the child. At that moment she is pure love. At that moment she is totally empty. And that is the primary feeling of both the Course in Miracles and also my book. That is the first principle, emptiness. And the word was emphasized to use the word emptiness because if we use any other word, you see, emptiness itself, when it is experienced, which is almost like an orgasm, you can feel this energy because at the moment there is nothing. I used it in my Skype clients, and I give them 5 methods to absolute stillness and emptiness. And when they reach the 5th stage of knowing that there is no expectations, no judgments, no past, no future, you're just empty, and at that moment you feel so good, so tranquil, so peaceful. And this is the beginning of understanding love. Love is not an emotion, love is not something. It is empty of everything that you can think of. In fact, when you feel this emptiness, you feel so full. You feel so full that you cannot define it. But that fullness has no words. And that's what being in love is. And being in love is not being in love specifically because when you are in love. When I had the light experience, I experienced love in a way I never had an idea of. I felt so loved. It's like nothing I can describe. Words fail me to describe the love that I felt. It defies any explanation. The closest thing I can come up with is the word fullness. But if I use the word fullness, then I go back into another concept again, just like using the concept love. You see, it is a full feeling. It is the very being of yourself. Now, let me go into the word emptiness. The moment we hear the word emptiness, we think of a lack. We become afraid. I remember when I was a teenager, I felt so lonely. I felt so separate from others that I felt this gut-wrenching emptiness in my heart. You see, until later on, many years later, I realized that that very emptiness I felt was a fullness. But it's only because I identified with who I thought I was, this body alone. And I didn't realize that emptiness was a fullness of everything around you. When I experienced the light, everything was myself. The light itself was an expression of my future self, so to speak, my potential self. It's unconditional love, infinite intelligence itself. When I returned after a couple of minutes, I retained the memory very clearly, but I couldn't talk about it because I didn't find words to describe it. And it was 10 years later that I wrote the book, The 4 Unknown Facts of Reality. And it came to me like a bolt of lightning. Now, the Course in Miracles is the same. The number 2 unknown fact of reality is that all suffering, all of it, is emotional suffering. And that suffering is the fear of emptiness. Isn't that something? The very love we yearn for, which we don't understand, is the fear that we feel because we don't understand. And the Course in Miracles describes it the best way. and it's also go into 4 unknown facts. Then the third one is that when we understand that our greatest fear, which is the fear of emptiness, the moment we start to have compassion for the fear, the moment we start to understand what is truly happening, that it is a yearning for love, it is a wanting to be loved, it is a need for love. It is, that's equated as emptiness, lacking something. But in truth, we're not lacking anything because we're always being, playing the human role. And the third one is, through that understanding, the third is unconditional love. We realize that all we ever wanted is unconditional love. Just like the child being yelled at by his mother, and I use this example because it's so good. And as he is yelled at, he becomes even more difficult to handle. But in his heart, he is saying, "Mommy, why don't you love me as I am instead of the way you want me to be?" In other words, he wants unconditional love. It's all we ever want. And then number 4 is that we trust that unconditional love as the very truth of our being. And when we trust it, miracles happen in our life. Now this is where I see the exact explanation of A Course in Miracles. That's what the miracle is. Miracles happen in our life most of the time when we begin to trust and surrender to the Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit, incidentally, is holy, whole, and spirit. In other words, nothingness, emptiness. But emptiness is not a void. Emptiness is a fullness that has no words. I cannot use the word fullness because then we have an idea what we think it means. Now the Course in Miracles states very clearly that there are 2 emotions, love and fear, and I repeat. But it also states that which is all-encompassing can have no opposite. So, love, it is referring to love. Love has no opposite. And love is something to be experienced, not as an emotion, but as a feeling of complete comfort in being here. Just like when you are with someone and you're so comfortable being with them as if you've known them all your life and you can be totally yourself and you trust them. That's the love. And when you say, "I love you," and you say back, "I love you also to you," there isn't 2 people loving each other, there's only love. Love is complete. Love is eternal, love is infinite, and has no words. In fact, any words you use, the Course says, words are symbols of symbols. So what it is that we are doing is reaching the heart, is beginning to understand that which is beyond words. The second principle of A Course in Miracles, after it talks about that which is all-encompassing and have no opposite, which it refers to as God, or the atonement, which is the oneness, we go back to unknown fact number 2 in the Course in Miracles, and that is, it's calling it at that point ego. Now the ego expresses, I remember studying psychology, Sigmund Freud came with that word ego and he broke it down into 3 parts. The id, and he also said that the conscience, not consciousness, but the conscience that we have is also being a better ego or an alter ego. Because Freud never went too far. And so he said that all suffering, all neuroses, all emotional pain comes from love and sex. And by using our conscience, which I guess he termed as our intuition, is the better ego, or rather being a good ego, which of course does not exist, because ego is an ego. It is not truth. It is a false self. So the Course in Miracles states very clearly that we think of love as something that we're going to gain, something that we want and need because we think we lack it. And so we seek a relationship because we feel that if we seek a relationship, it's going to complete us. We do not realize that we're already empty and we are complete, but we do not realize it, of course, so we want somebody else to make us feel loved. But that love becomes codependent. That's what the Course means by special relationship. We begin to feel that the person is not completing us as much as we wanted that other to do, and so we develop a state of need. That need becomes a feeling of guilt, because the guilt makes us feel we're not good enough, there's something wrong with us, we're missing something. Because again, we still don't know what love is. And so what happens is that through guilt comes fear. And the fear starts our complexity, our dysfunction in the relationship. That's why relationships can be so difficult. And nowadays they hardly last very long. And we go from one relationship to another thinking that somehow we're going to find the perfect mate, but there is no perfect mate. There is only one perfect mate, you. The clearer you become in loving yourself by becoming empty, the more you attract a similar partner. And so by being comfortable together because you both want the truth, then that's when the relationship becomes a holy relationship. It becomes complete. Nobody loves another. There is only love. Love is complete in itself because love is empty of anything that we can name, anything that we can put or define. Also, the Course states how that when we are caught in the ego, we have two very powerful vices called denial and projection. You see, when we find ourselves lacking this love, we find a discomfort. But we keep denying it because it feels like guilt. It feels like there's something wrong. And we keep denying it. And the only way to deny it so that we throw it out, to get rid of it, we project it onto another. So we start to blame our partner. So the codependent relationship, which is really a special relationship, as the Course calls it, is really nothing more than a way of learning about ourselves. And by blaming another, because it's actually, you see, the special relationship is built on love-hate relationship. And eventually it can lead to pure love when we mature and begin to understand. And then when we see that all our pain in the relationship, in any relationship, even relationship with ourselves, is based on one thing, that we keep on denying and projecting what we feel. In other words, we deny what we are truly feeling, and so we try to blame somebody else for the way we feel, and that's called projection. But when we start to see that it's all in us, we are really seeing, this is when we understand. The moment we begin to understand, we will find that every feeling of discomfort, every neurotic feeling, every painful feeling, or all suffering, is a need for love. The Course calls it, it's a call for love. Well, the moment when this is the third part of the Course of Miracles, okay? So when we begin to understand that all suffering is a call for love, it's the wanting for love, to return back to the source, to return back to the being that we are, which is ever so beautiful and loving. And this is who we are. Just like the mother when she holds the child in her arms, and at that moment she is so complete, but she's not thinking of her own completion, because she's in love. She's a being. So when we begin to understand that all suffering is a call for love, a need for love, a need to love who we are as a being, not being this or being that or achieving anything or attaining anything. Love is a nothing. Love is not something to be gained. Love is the being itself. You are a human being playing the human role. When we start to understand that, we move into the fourth principle of A Course of Miracles, which is called surrender, which is called forgiveness. You see, because when we begin to see that everything is a call for love, we automatically begin to forgive ourselves for the way we feel. Because all we ever want is to feel okay, is to feel happy with ourselves. But in the beginning we deny it and we project it. And then we begin to smarten up as we develop a love of the truth. And we look at ourselves without blaming ourselves, without hating ourselves. On the contrary, we will have compassion for who we are, because everything is a call for love. Well, when that becomes very clear to us, we begin to forgive ourselves. To forgive yourself is very simple. There's nothing to forgive, because all you ever want is love, which is your true nature. So you give yourself that. You give yourself the compassion that everything that you feel is okay, as long as you really feel it is okay, because it was all a learning curve. It's bringing you closer and closer. And finally we come to the fourth part of the Course, which is also the fourth part that I write in my book, The Four Unknown Facts. It is called Trust in the Holy Spirit. That when you realize you are a being playing the human role, and you begin to accept, surrender, allow, forgive, you begin to live the miraculous life. And so many miracles begin to come to your life. So many miracles have come into my life, and I'm so grateful. But the most grateful is this feeling of emptiness when I meditate. It's just like reaching a higher plateau of existence, which of course is the case. I have to ask your forgiveness here in giving you this, because it comes very clear to me, but when I try to put it in words, I find it hard. So, in brief, the four unknown facts are that there is only one principle, and that is emptiness. Emptiness is the unlimited, infinite intelligence. It is unconditional love itself. When it is not understood, we go to number two. It becomes our greatest fear. This is when we become dysfunctional, we begin to suffer tremendously, because we think we're even become afraid of death. Would be a fear of being no more type of thing. Okay, and but when we begin to understand that emptiness itself is the grace to, instead of going and taking drugs to band-aid our suffering, we start to look at it. We start learning from it. When you start learning from it, then you go into the third one. It's called return to love, which is really forgiveness, which is really, in my particular case, unknown fact. It's unconditional love, seeing that everything is a need for love. And all living things in nature are consciousness. They are love itself. It's hard to believe. Animals, all trees, grass, flowers are all living things and a part of that love that we are. And then number 4, which is trust in the Holy Spirit in my particular book. And the Course in Miracles, it is also trust in the Holy Spirit. That the Holy Spirit, which is whole, which is complete, which is emptiness itself, you trust it so completely that miracles start to happen in your life. And your life becomes a blessed experience. I hope that I've made many points to cover this, but the moment I start talking about it, I get carried away. But I hope you get the message that the Course in Miracles and the unknown facts of existence, it all comes back to the same thing. It is your being, learning to accept that you are a human being, and this being is perfect. This being to just be. Surrender, allowing, acceptance, forgiving, loving. It all comes back to one thing, to be. Thank you. Namaste.